Happy evening, friends. Welcome back again for our episode number 30. And I'm really thrilled today because today we have somebody whom I've been admiring for quite some time, and I've been following him and learning from him during our mutual association. And one more reason is today we are talking on a very, very critical topic, especially from the sales mastery and life mastery perspective. A topic which I have been also studying and learning and trying to understand in the data depth. That's a topic of trust. Friends, today the topic is cultivating trust, essential sales strategies for sales leaders. But as we know, in this podcast, we have been trying to get people of experience, people of authenticity, people of credibility, and people who have really worked at the ground level and who are basically able to contribute to enhancing a person, not only from the sales and the business perspective, but also from the life perspective. And friends, the guest we have today is one such person, and who's, I would say, a global trainer, global consultant. He is recognized as one of the top 100 best global coaching leaders by WCC, and his company, Reenergetics Consultant, was awarded as one of the top 100 global training and development leader by the World Training and Development Congress. He has been my close friend and a close buddy in Professional Speakers Association of India, where he has held a very, very important post like secretary, and he's also going to be the chairperson of the next oncoming Professional Speakers Summit in Mumbai. He's also been a Rotarian of the for quite some year and has been a Rotarian of the Year award for 2005. Friends, this multifaceted, highly successful, but a very humble and a grounded person is whom is going to give us deeper insight into this very important quality or concept of cultivating trust. Well, as you all know, in sales, we always talk about first sell yourself and then the product gets sold. Or ultimately, if you reframe it, what it means is first cultivate the trust, build that trust bond with your customer. And once if you have built that trust, the rest would be very, very easy for you to further take the relationship from the personal to your business relationship, and thereby have a long-term win-win relationship for both of you. And this is one of the topics. So let's, Subbu, as I call him, Subramanian Narayan, is the person who is going to be the distinguished guest today. Welcome, Subra, for today's podcast number 30. And I'm really honored. And I thank you for taking out time from your busy schedule and being present here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be on your call.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Subbu, can I call you Subbu here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Conversation, because I know we relate from that perspective, and I'm sure we have that closeness to be addressed in this first name.
Definitely.
And Subbu, you have been a student and a master of the concept of trust. So when I was preparing for this particular podcast, I wanted to understand, how would you define trust? And what is its relevance, both from the perspective of business, sales, and in life?
So what is the relevance? Let me take that question first. I think almost all of us would agree that trust is the most important aspect in our lives, whether it is personal relationships, whether it's home, office, social circle. Undoubtedly, we all agree that trust is the most important aspect.
Very true.
And we all agree with that. And what was the earlier question you had? The first part of that question?
How would you define trust?
How would I define? So there has been many research that have been done in the space of trust. And this has been going on for literally 30 plus years, much more than that. But as much as I have done my research on people doing research on trust, I know for sure 30 plus years the research on trust has been going on. One of the findings of that research says that trust is very complex. So why am I saying trust is very complex? When we start defining trust, the beauty or the complexity of the topic is such that what trust means to me will not be the same for you. And what may be for both of us, what it may be something X, Y, Z, may not necessarily be the same for someone else. So that's the beauty, that's the complexity with which we are dealing with. And so is the reason why many a times we lose relationship.
Wow.
So I'll give you a very small example. If I am late by 5 minutes and you and I are in Mumbai city, we will ignore that. And ignore that because maybe we don't feel that's important. But to someone else, time might be the real metrics to judge how a character of the person is. For someone, if somebody is late by 5 minutes, they don't like to be kept waiting. They like to know what time you're going to reach. Now, because they are so sensitive to it, and because they know the realities of the world, they may not express it the first time. But it's already impacted them when you're late by 5 minutes. Forget 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and so on and so forth. And when you do that repeatedly with that particular person who is very, very sensitive on time, and he literally takes time as the basis to define somebody's character, at some point in time, that person is going to say, I can't trust this person. He can't even reach on time. And not once, but consistently he shows. So trust is very complex. We may say, and from our world and from our map of the world, we may come and say, come on, that was just 5 minutes. And Mumbai city, 5 minutes, nobody's going to make an issue. So from my world, perspective of the world and map, I might say it's no big deal. But when he or she expresses their uncomfortableness or their hurt or they're getting upset, you get surprised and shocked. And that's how many such incidences. So research also says this. Research says 95% of the time, 95% of the time, trust is broken. Unintentionally. Now look at that number. 95%. How exposed are we in breaking trust? And now you put that into a context of sales.
Yeah.
And a prospective client. You're really dealing with a lot of explosive issues.
True. Absolutely. Now, well said, Subbu. Subbu, in fact, while when you were answering this question, the thing which came to my mind was, we talk about integrity. Integrity is honoring your word. And as you were rightly saying, sometimes we go late for a meeting or we go late for an appointment, and then immediately that can result to trust being broken. So how would you compare or how would you relate integrity to trust?
I would say they are almost the same in many situations. I can't hardly think of a situation where the person is trustworthy but does not have the integrity, right? So I think they go literally hand in hand. I will have to think of any particular exceptions to that rule where you are not being following integrity, but you are following trust. I would say that goes literally hand in hand. And so yeah, they are almost the same, if not the same.
Yeah, because they say with integrity, everything is possible, and without integrity, nothing is possible. So,
Yeah, they say the test of integrity is what you do when no one is looking at you.
right, right. Absolutely. And it's like it looks like a cause and effect relationship between the two.
So I would say that if you don't imbibe trust at a mindset level, at a behavioral level, then you don't have integrity.
Hmm, hmm.
And if you are not internally driven, trust will show as real or fake.
Right.
Think about that.
Awesome. Because, all these points, what we are discussing here in terms of integrity, trust. And now I wanted to get into the next point of authenticity. Because again, we say that authenticity, as you rightly said, the mental plane is what you think, what you say, and what you do. When all these three things match, then you're
Yeah.
authentic. So again, here, authenticity again is a very, very close relation to trust and integrity. So how would you comment on that, Subbu?
In fact, one of the researchers, I'm trying to remember her name. She was working for Uber and then she left. She is also a professor in one of the elite universities in US, and she has written a book, and she talks about authenticity being one of the three pillars of trust.
Oh, and which are the other two?
So I think the other one was clarity, and the third one I forget. So there are many authors who have mentioned about authenticity. They have mentioned about authenticity one way or the other. Um, uh, Going and talking with good intention. When you're talking to each other, trying to resolve some conflict, but wanting to do that with good intention for the outcome of the bigger cause is also being authentic. So there are multiple behaviors that the authors have defined, highlighted, flagged, where authenticity is always mentioned. And so authenticity is one of the key behaviors for building trust.
Awesome. In fact, I think, thanks to your sharing, all these points get cleared because people get confused because with these three terms, and thereby their ability to improve their trust quotient goes up. Because, as you rightly said, especially for sales guys, winning the trust of your customer, your client, your prospect is so very important.
True.
Now, so I want to ask you this, what are the normal, if you can, as an expert in cultivating, or as we call it as cultivating trust, what are the practices which a human being or which a salesperson, or for that matter, I would say human being in general, should practice in order for him to improve his trust quotient among everybody? It may be in his personal life, in his professional life, in his social life, and so on and so forth.
So there are many people who have, like I said earlier, who have done research. One of the author couple, American couple that I follow, and we have licensed from them, and we have I've certified myself in the space of building trust. And Dennis Reyna and Michelle Reyna, they have literally spent 25, 30 years of their lives researching on just this one topic,
Wow.
trust. 25, 30 years of their lives. And so I'm grateful for all that I have gotten with as many interactions and the joint workshops and all of the stuff that we have done, including the certification from them. And they have nailed down to 16 behaviors.
16 behavior. Oh.
16 behaviors. And they have nailed that down to 16 behaviors where they talk about three categories, and they have categorized them into three categories of behaviors. The 16 behaviors, they are further categorized into character, communication, and capability. So there are behaviors that define the character, highlight the character. There are behaviors that addresses the communication, and there are behaviors that addresses the capability. And so they've written a couple of books on building trust in workplace. And the author's name is Dennis and Michelle Reyna. They are a couple, and they have just dedicated their life for this. And then there are people like Paul Zak who continue to experiment with trust and neuroscience. And Paul Zak, last year, I think he wrote an article in Harvard Business Review on the topic of neuroscience of trust. And Paul Zak basically came up from this research that he did. He basically came up and said that the brain chemical oxytocin is responsible for building trust.
Oh,
so yeah, so he identified that oxytocin is the brain chemical. When that gets released, you have team bonding, employee engagement, and trust kicks in. In fact, his research flags off some interesting statistics. He basically says when you compare people with low trust companies, people at high trust companies report 74% less stress.
oh, wow.
106% more energy at work. 50% high productivity. 13% fewer sick days.
Oh,
76% more engagement. We talk about employee engagement all the time. Now, trust kicks that to 76% higher in companies that show trust, high trust. 29% more satisfaction with their lives, and 40% less burnout.
wow, wow. This is phenomenal. I think now the statistics which you have thrown in, I think that was my next question. In your expertise, especially as a leadership coach, organizational leadership as well, we talked about culture. And so even I am a big fan of culture in the companies which I manage, the training which I conduct. We always talk about culture because between culture and strategy, culture is more important. And they say that if culture and strategy are in unison, you can eat your competitor for breakfast. And if your culture and strategy are in variance, then your own culture will eat your own strategy for lunch. So, so as you have said in your resume as well, that you are a person who's an expert in building trust culture in organization. So, what would be the methodology, Subbu, for creating this trust culture, which you said is very important as you rolled out those statistics? So, I think no founder, no chairman, no owner, or no board of directors would ever flinch any organization in investing on building a culture of trust.
Yeah, and that's a great question. I'd like to start with a background that actually speaks to what the point you're making. I've been in corporate for 35 plus years.
Yes.
And managed multiple teams. We have been pushed, monitored for our effectiveness as a leader. And so we have continuously continue to push our levels by learning, experimenting, and all of that. But the most interesting aspect of that 35 years is this, that in all those 35 years, I never sat down with anyone suggesting that we discuss the topic of trust.
Mm-hmm.
I have had all kind of communications. I've had tough conversations. I've had feedbacks. I have had performance reviews, but not a single conversation has been on a specific, explicit topic of trust. Never ever have I had a conversation and said, can we discuss how we can build trust between each other? Can we discuss how we can build trust in this team? Can we discuss how we can build trust with your bosses or any of that matter, using the word explicitly as trust? And that was a defining moment when I was sitting on this conference room, attending one of the many seminars that I attend. And there was this couple, American couple, Dennis and Michelle, giving a keynote on building trust. And as the keynote progresses, right smack in the middle of that keynote, all my wires in the brain are activated. And I'm like saying, this is the space that I would like to focus in my career, in my next chapter. Although I was doing consulting, coaching, and training, I was saying, this is the area that I want to work. And suddenly it brought back a metaphorical image or a video in my mind, which was, I could literally see nowadays these new buildings have these glass facades. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you are able to peep in. And I kind of metaphorically saw this glass facade of an office with multiple floors where people are walking with multiple invisible band-aids all over their body, because either they have been betrayed or they have been hurt because somebody has not understood or broken their trust or weakened the trust in their relationships. And that was the first image in my mind that popped up. And I said, there are so many people in this world who need this. And that is when we decided to pursue this American couple. We went through their book first, and then we connected on LinkedIn, and then we met personally. I flew to US, stayed with them for 3 days in their town. And that is how we started the relationship of building trust. And it's been now almost 7-8 years now. And the whole point of the thing is trust. The research also says this very clearly, that trust has a direct connection, is directly connected to your top line and bottom line. Meaning, if you do not have trust, your performance will get impacted or is being impacted. And so your top line and bottom lines are being impacted. And there has been enough research. In fact, many of our clients who have taken trust as a process seriously and have worked with us for at least 8 months have seen direct results in changes in their metrics improving. If they are finance organization, we have some in the industry of finances where all the outstanding credit went down. They were able to recover more. In the case of manufacturing units, their costs got better, as in cost went low, their savings or wastages went down, and they were able to improve their profits. But the organization needs to dedicate at least 7-8 months. And the reason I say 7-8 months, because nowadays there are very, very few organizations who genuinely want to invest time in change, real change. And when it comes to trust, it is all about behaviors. And you and I know that behaviors won't change in a day or in a week or even a month. You need constant monitoring, support, experiment, back in class, again, go into the real world, continue to do what they have been promised, set goals, follow up, come back into the class, again, remind them, check where they are, what is holding them back, their own self-awareness. So that iteration, when it gets into a habit, when it gets into the behavior and then a habit, you have trust triggering all your numbers in your favor. But organizations need to invest. It's not a microwave process. It's not microwavable. It's not a fast food technique or a process. Just like sales process, you got to follow the process. You got to trust the process, follow the process, get that into a mindset, and then you will start seeing results. And so some of the behaviors, and you had asked the question saying, how do we build trust? So some of the behaviors that we can do is manage expectations. Now, manage expectations is not a new term. Manage expectations, we have heard multiple times, and we continue to hear multiple times. But the beauty of this point is, or the behavior is, that the best of the best companies, you take any name, any industry in this world, globally, best of the best companies, they still have managed expectations as the most number one topic for building trust, meaning that is the behavior that offers opportunity. Why is that so? So the other point here for all of us and to the audience here is, we have always understood that trust is intangible. But that is a history, or that was history. For the last 20, 25 years, trust can be measured.
Wow.
Trust can be quantified.
Yes.
And trust is quantifiable at a business level, at a team level, at an individual level, which means you're basically saying, I can measure and then tweak and improve the trust levels. So managing expectations. Why is managing expectations a big issue? Because when I communicate something to my subordinate or to my senior, I have certain things in my mind, which is my mental picture of what I'm communicating. But the words that I use to communicate and the person receiving those words does not have my mental picture, and which means there is a big difference being explicitly communicating versus implicitly communicating. And most of the time, we communicate most of it implicitly. And so managing expectations becomes an issue. Now, sales, we always talk about, if you can't build trust and if you can't build connection, forget the results, right? You may be successful in that sale, but no repeat sale is going to happen. So being consistent was another behavior that got flagged, meaning you got to follow the process, you got to be consistent to the point where the customer can predict your behavior and the results from your product or service. Now, how cool is that, right? If the customer can predict your behavior and the results from your service or products, you have a repeat customer. And trust also says the same thing. Consistency delivers consistent results and improves trust.
Awesome. Brilliant. I think you covered up a number of points, and especially in sales, we always say about the concept of managing your expectation, promise less, deliver more, and which is a very, very fundamental initial training which is given to every salesperson, because the novices tend to overcome it and under-deliver, and that's where the trust and the confidence goes down. Very, very true. You really pinpointed that. So one more point which came to my mind was, of course, we talked about organizational culture. When you talk about trust in an organization, I was just getting present to, this was in one of the companies where I was training, and where we produced an exponential results. And the results, after a matter of 18 months, just give you an example. We took a company sale from 165 crores to 635 crores in an 18 months journey.
Nice.
The company's name was LMW Machine Tool Division, which was stagnating for almost 3-4 years. And when they were exposed to this transformational training on a periodic fashion over every 45 days, in just about 18 months, they could have this phenomenal jump in sale. So there, the reason was self-belief got triggered. So I was getting present to whether this belief self-belief is nothing but self-trust. So I wanted your take on this.
So yeah, the self-belief from a neuroscience perspective, and we do a whole lot of work in the space of neuroscience under
Right.
what we trademark it as neurogetics.
Right.
Now, self-belief does play a part in reminding them of all their past success. So call it self-confidence, call it a good trigger of a memory because of their successes, is all going to play in favor of that person and everybody in that team. The other thing from a neuroscience perspective is the brain has all the time, there is a trigger which releases all the right hormones and all the right brain chemicals to bring what we call as their up state, where they get into a peak performance state. Now, if the memories are pleasant, then it's very easy for them to think about the successes and get into that mode, and they continue to deliver that peak performance. For multiple reasons, the mind believes, there is a self-belief that I can do it, I have done it, there's enough proof. And the point you made where with 150 plus odd crores of turnover to 600 something crores is very clearly telling them what they thought earlier was impossible now has been made possible. Yeah. And so the neurological pathways are familiar with the fact of saying, I can do this and I can repeat it. And there is an element where we call it anchoring, meaning there is a place, there is a group that has always had these emotions that have come together of recognizing how good it is in terms of releasing and experiencing the hormones that gets released when they are going through a process which is successful. And one of the trust behaviors that have also been identified, which is relevant in this space, is when people are challenged, and Paul Zak calls it as challenge stress, quote unquote, a stress which is moderate, but it is good enough to egg people to go forward and work on it. It's good enough. It doesn't create unacceptable stress, which leads to health conditions, but enough stress to kind of push them forward, to kind of use all that they have, bring their 500% of their capabilities into action. And so what you're giving me an example, and what you said about self-belief, is when that same team comes together, there's already that connect, there's already that experience that they have created together, and they continue to live in that experience to grow that further and further.
So there is a close correlation between self-trust and self-belief?
Yeah, so because once you have a good experience as a group and you have been able to achieve some breakthrough results, that team bonding at a very, shall we say, unconscious level is going to be very deep. And for someone to show that sort of a results, unless it was a blip in the economy, and I don't think that was the case, then that dynamics and that memories are going to trigger the same emotions. And we even call it, there are muscle memories that tend to give off that expressions and results.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I totally agree with you, because beliefs are the mother of every results. Belief leads to attitude, attitude to action, action to results. And of course, the trust has a lot of significance to play here. And as you said, trust is now, is trust a trainable quality? Can you train people to be trustworthy?
Yeah, and I think that's the shall we say, $1 million question, and a worthy question at that, because we all agree trust is important. We all agree trust is a life skill, not just a skill in the office. It's a life skill because that's how relationships are built. That's human to human. That's what it is. Yes. So obviously the question comes up, is trust learnable, trainable? And yes, the answer to that is very much yes. That is the basis on which many of our clients who have embraced trust have seen the value, because it's not good enough to say where you are with your trust score, because that's just the starting point. And then you got to take them, lead them through that path, which enables and empowers them to equip themselves with those behaviors and then repeat those behaviors in their routine normal day in their office. And when all that gets into a habit, which is where we need at least 7 8 months for them to get it into a psyche, then you start seeing the results. And that's where people start using the terminology, because earlier they're not sure, how do I position myself? But now they speak the terminologies of these behaviors. So for example, they will come and say, can I speak to you? I come with good intentions. So some of these terminologies are borrowed from the training, but once you use the same terminology and same language, everyone understands, because they all have been in the same group. They all understand that new language of trust. And once I start using that, they all know that they have to come up to the levels of the expectations of what is expected of them. So even if they have insecurity, which many a times holds us back from admitting all our errors and mistakes, and we don't want to show the dirty world of our side, I think trust slowly allows them, gives them confidence and courage to become vulnerable. And you and I know the power of being vulnerable.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, this was one more question which I had thought of, the importance of vulnerability, being vulnerable in enhancing a person's trust quotient. And as you would rightly say, being vulnerable and exposing oneself to become vulnerable is, again, I would say, not a very common quality. So how would you correlate this, and what would be your take on vulnerability with trust quotient?
I will be vulnerable here to
Yeah.
start with. Most of my career, I would hear the word vulnerable, but I did not know how to become vulnerable.
Yes.
And I think it was a very long drawn process for me to start accepting me as I am,
Yeah.
with all my inefficiencies, with all my ineffectiveness. Accept and believe that I am as normal as anyone else is in the world. And I think it's an internal journey. It's a very internal process. There are ways now where you can speed up that internal journey. When I was struggling with that, if I could use the word, in my career, when I was in the corporate, I didn't know how to get all that addressed, because it was more the fear inside, right? And when you have that fear, you don't express that to others. Why? Because you're asking yourself, can I really be that open with my office colleagues? That's the question you have. And sometimes even if you open up, they don't know how to help you either. So the question remains where it is. You continue to have that fear. So it took me quite some time. I think I think it happened only when I left corporate and I went into the entrepreneur journey, where I quit my job and got into set up Renergetics Consulting. That was 12 years back. Along the way, my business partner, who was innately very good at helping you with internal changes, and there is a technique, we call that now as neurogetics, where it allows you to let go of that fear. And I think it took me a good amount of effort to let go of the fear, purely because when somebody says let go of the fear is real for you. And so it's hard to let go of something that you fear. So there is a process to do that. And I think when I was able to come out of that, I was able to kind of accept myself as I am. And then it was much easier to then be vulnerable because everyone has some of the other weak spot. Everyone is human enough that you can't say, I'm the boss, so I will not make mistakes. So I think vulnerable, one way to look at it is start sharing some of your failures in a milder stories, which are not significant. And once you gain some confidence and once you start sharing it in a, shall we say, in a more inner circle where you trust some people, and maybe at home or maybe with your friends, if you start sharing some of those stories where you did not do as well as you thought you should have, those stories then can be taken out much more wider circle. And you will be, once you start doing that, you will be surprised with the responses you get. And obviously, when someone is being vulnerable, you are already saying that I'm as open and as normal as you are. And when that happens, you have set a behavior that's going to be replicated. And what's that behavior? In the office corporate space, people are going to come to you and say, sorry, I made this error. Sorry, I made this mistake. And that's exactly what you want. And that's exactly the space which we now call it as psychological safety or psychologically safe workplace.
Yeah. So you in the earlier answer had given three dimensions towards building trust. That is character, communication, and capability. And
Right.
now what you talked about vulnerability, isn't the vulnerability is a part of being an open, honest communication with yourself as well as with your peers, with your subordinates.
Yeah, it is. But the distinction with vulnerability is it's all about you.
Yeah.
It's not about the subordinate or the senior.
Yes. Yes.
Open, honest communication, we always believe and do. I have in my corporate life been open, honest in my communication, but have I been vulnerable? I don't think so as much as I would have to.
Right.
I would love to.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And yeah, and it all boils down to, am I open and honest about all my inhibitions and fears and expressing that to my team? That's the key question for vulnerable.
Absolutely. In fact, I'm totally with you, Subbu. You know, over the years, as we have gained experiences, initially all of us have got that inner insecurity, and we have a tendency to go towards a negative bias in terms of our thinking. And
Yeah.
I think also the lack of self-confidence as well, which makes us gloss over or cover up our fallacies and failures, which subsequently, as you would have, as you and I know, gets found out. If my even though I may feel that I'm trying to hide it, but it gets automatically known to the other person very, very clearly. And this is very much important in the sales context. Like you feel that you are able to manipulate, or you are able to manipulate a customer, but customer knows it.
Yeah, and that reminds me of that point here as well. It's so much obvious in sales that we all talk about sales being a process. We all talk about every contact is your asset.
Yes.
As a salesman, as a consultant, as you go into the sales career growth and all of that, every contact is your asset. And the basic fundamental point in that is you're gaining trust and building relationship. It's not about getting the sales numbers. Sales numbers is the outcome, the byproduct.
Yeah.
And clearly comes back to that point, which is a famous line, which says, "Karma ki yaja, phal ki ichha mat kar."
Yeah. Absolutely.
Follow the process.
Yeah. In sales, so we'd always talk about till the time. It's like a curve. If you take it as a graph, it's till the time you get the trust, the sale is always very tepid. But there comes a point of time when you get the customer's trust and that inflection point kicks in, and then there is a hockey stick growth.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
and I think that's what you rightly are referring to. And
Yeah.
how fast you are able to gain that trust is what I feel is a good salesperson made of. Am I
Yeah.
saying that?
Absolutely. Totally with you on that, because at the end of the day, you build trust at so many levels. You build trust on the product, you build trust on the organization that you represent, you build even more fundamental, you build trust on you as a brand.
Yeah, absolutely. And
And
your
and the
core, yeah.
and the
You
point
spoke about,
really here,
yeah.
the point here really comes
Yeah, sorry.
down to is, have you been successful in building trust only on the product and service, or have you built trust on yourself?
Yes, absolutely. Like in our networking training program, we normally say that those small actions over a period of time compounds in order to get those ultimate trust point. Would I be right in saying this, Subbu, that trust does not happen overnight? It happens over a period of time based upon your small actions which you take in relation to another human being or your task.
Yes, that is so true. That really reminds me of another concept in building trust. There are some people who develop trust very quickly, and amongst them, there are some who, despite having experienced trust being broken, still tend to trust people
Yes,
easily. The point here is there are some of us who have a much larger trust tank, just like a just like a vehicle has a fuel tank. Some of us have much larger trust tank, and so they're able to use that more often, more frequently. Some of us don't have large tank, and so we are very cautious. The smallest of small impact, we get very cautious and don't even try at some point in time. And so that is why you can't just say one liner and saying, yes, I agree, because it may be very different for different people. Because trust is complex and trust is also very provocative. Why provocative? Because it's very emotional.
very emotional. Yeah.
So if it is positive, it's equally provocative. If it's negative, the word provocative really has its dictionary meaning.
Absolutely. In fact, in our sales training, and one of my book called Sales Mastery, I always say that initial response of every prospective customer is no. I have to think over. Sales does not happen in the first call. It is said that to get the first sale from any prospect, it takes anywhere between 5 to 10 calls. Now, when you analyze the way the customer goes about thinking, we call it the gestation process. And in the gestation process, the basic concept is customer first evaluates, is this person credible? Next one is he thinks the next step is thinks about, is the product what he is selling relevant? And third is the third step, which normally every prospect thinks about, is the product which is offering you value for money? And the fourth step is, why should I buy now? So as a seller, I have to keep it in mind that a customer is progressing from credibility to relevance to value for money and the urgency now. So here again, credibility means trust. So the first point comes as trust, Subbu. And as you rightly said, it's emotional. That is, emotional means subconscious mind, as we know in neurogenetics, in the
Neurogenetics.
neurogenetics. So there it is said that normally why customers say no to you is mainly because of their past experience where they have been sold or short sold something to them which was of no use to them. some product or services, or they were overcharged. And that memory is there deep in their mind, because of which most of the customers, as I and you also know, never jump into giving in order on the very first call. They are evaluating and they are actually fighting with their subconscious mind, which is the emotional part of their mind.
And there is so much neuroscience involved in that milliseconds when they define
Right.
your credibility. Now, there are many of us, or some of us, who go and talk about managing the body language.
Yes.
And people don't realize that the body language is just an external appearances and behaviors that show up. Now, body languages show based on how you feel internally. You can fake it, but our ability to understand someone who is natural, comfortable, trustworthy, we make that judgment in milliseconds.
Right.
And no matter how trained you are with the body languages and the power poses and all of that, it won't work unless you yourself are comfortable, congruent. And then that gets mirrored by the customer, potential customer.
Yeah. Now, so as an expert on this topic of cultivating trust, essential strategy for sales leaders, I think, is there a way, is there some mechanism, is there a process or a system by which you can fast track the gaining of trust of your, I would say, subordinates, team members, colleagues, customers, prospects?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it is the most, shall we say, if I could say, if there's any space left to be more competitive at the core, I would say is trust today. And I'm reminded of the Reina's quote in this, where they say, trust is the bridge between the business need for results. Trust is the bridge between the business need for results and the human need for connection. So, and trust can be fast-tracked if leaders understand that it is clearly emphasized, whether you look at Paul Zach's articles, various researchers who have done work in this space, Reina's research in this space of building trust, they have very clearly said it starts with behavioral change. And behavioral change, once you invest your time, just as people invest in teaching and training sales processes so that they get that, shall we, like people say, even if I woke you up from your sleep, you should be able to sell. That's the comment people do. But there is a fundamental level at which it needs to be done, and that is at the level of trust. When you do that at the level of trust, and then you follow the process, even if you're not good at saying the right dialogue at the right time, the fact that you are motivated and driven by the trust, which is internally driven and guided, and we spoke about credibility, for being ethical and all of that, when you have those qualities, the customer is going to connect, no matter whether you know the language, no matter whether you understand the local custom, no matter how you're dressed, so long as you're decent enough, the customer is going to connect. Why? Because we all are born with the skill to detect trust. And that happens at a very unconscious level. We are not taught in the school, nor we need to teach that in the school. We get that. We are born with it. We know whom to trust. It's a very intuitive process. So it can be taught, it can be trained, but leaders have to understand one more thing. It's a double-edged sword. Why is it a double-edged sword? You can't preach and not follow. You can't say, this is for all of those people in my team. No, it starts with you first.
Absolutely.
And that's the challenge. That's the challenge because you need to invest time and money. You need to invest and commit yourself. And if those two come together, the results are guaranteed. The research, there is enough white papers, enough researches happen, and enough case studies that we have that clearly shows the direct connection.
Absolutely. I think I totally get it. Ultimately, you have to lead by example, and the bottleneck is always in the top. So you need to realize that if there is a trust gap in your team, it has to start from the leader, from the top.
Yeah,
And
John Maxwell says that. John Maxwell says in his book 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, John Maxwell says the first law, he's written 21 laws. The first law is law of the lid. John Maxwell says
yes,
that your results as a leader will be restricted by this lid of leadership because you can't go beyond that level of your own leadership. Your results can never go beyond your leadership level, max level. And so you got to lift this lid for you to be able to be more relevant to the organization, to the team.
absolutely. You said it. And I know. Uh, so last question, because now we have almost completed 55 minutes. That's awesome because we never realized that how the time just flew away.
Yeah.
And it was such a pleasure. And because, first of all, your total passion for the subject was very much visible. And you touched upon so many different concepts. I'm sure as this Sales Mastery podcast is mainly towards young entrepreneurs who are starting their industry and cutting their enterprises. And we really want to hope and feel that these nuggets of wisdom, which all our phenomenal guests like you share with them, will help them to accelerate their growth as a business entrepreneur and thereby make their enterprise successful. Uh, so what would be the advice that you would give to especially these young entrepreneurs, Subbu, who are starting off on the journey of being their own masters or starting their own enterprise? How should they use this important distinction of trust in building their business?
I would say every successful entrepreneur, every disruptive product or service has happened because of that entrepreneur's ability to discern and see an opportunity when nobody saw it.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a very given. So if we build that on that platform, I would say every entrepreneur needs to identify what are the gears that they need to shift to get to their success, depending on the industry, product, service that they are pursuing. And if I had to repeat what we have said so far, trust sits smack in the middle of everything that they do. As a team, as a product, as a brand, and as an investor, as a person looking for investment in their ideas, trust is at the core. And that's what is going to give them the results. Any field, anytime, it's a life skill. Whether they are married, they are single, whether they are with kids, trust is an education that needs to be given, to be learned. Everything else, of course, are important.
And as you said, it all starts with yourself, be it in your personal, professional, social life. How trusting are you with yourself and then to others? In fact, in conclusion, Subbu, I'd like to say, the one statement which I learned from somebody and I've been using it, especially in business, that when you say this to your customer, when you can say this to your customer with that confidence, that if my product and service is of no use to you, then your money is of no use to me. And if you I think if you can live by that particular statement, I am sure you would be able to not only think trust, talk trust, and even act like a trusting person.
So true.
So this, and I think on this note, I would really like to once again thank you for your valuable time. We have spent this last 1 hour. I'm sure all those who watch us, or those who are watching us live, and also those who will be watching this video subsequently, either in the YouTube or the other channels. I really want you all to appreciate each and every statement which Subbu sir made, which has got a huge relevance for you to live not only a successful business life, but also as a successful personal life. So, Subbu, any last statement or advice you want to give to the listeners?
No, I would say all the very best, and I trust all the success for you.
Thank you, and God bless. So, with this, friends, we end this 30th episode of our Sales Mastery Show. I hope you have enjoyed this particular conversation, which I had with my very close friend Subramanian Narayan, fondly called by close people to him as Subbu. And I'm sure each of you can take a lot of nuggets of wisdom and apply in your life. Thank you and God bless. We'll again meet up for our next episode, the 31st episode, which will be next week, same time and same platform. Thank you and God bless.